All right, well, today we have Jeff on. Jeff is actually the first Sandler trainer I ever met. I was a competitor of his actually at the time. I was working at Force Management, but definitely learned a ton when we were at a COCC event, which is a college here in Bend, and learned a ton. Thought, you know what, we're learning about how to do outbound and all that kind of stuff. We should have Jeff come teach us, give us some more wisdom. So, Jeff, anything else I missed in that intro you want to cover?
No, that's great. I am a principal consultant at OMEP these days. OMEP is the Oregon Manufacturing Extension Partnership, which is a mouthful, but it's a consulting firm in Portland that helps manufacturers be able to improve their efficiency. Traditionally, they have done this on the operations side. They're all MBAs in Lean and Six Sigma and all of that good stuff, but they've noticed that many manufacturers need help with revenue, and so they bought a Sandler franchise and recently hired me.
Yeah. They give you a specific reason that they picked you, or did you come and like reach out to them out of the cold and be like, hey, by the way, just in case you need like an expert?
Well, both actually.
Oh,
So
nice.
so they bought a Sandler franchise 2 years ago because they had been through Sandler sales training and realized that although they aren't salespeople, this was a process and they're process people and they could follow
Mhm.
this process. So they started trying to share some of the principles with their clients, but it dawned on them that if they were really going to be effective at helping their manufacturing clients figure out how to sell better, that they probably should buy a franchise. And so I approached them, and with my background of 18 years as a Sandler trainer, they said, "Oh yeah, we'd love to work with you."
It makes sense, right?
Yeah,
Why try to struggle through something when they can just bring on an expert to
yeah,
run that process?
yeah, yeah.
It's interesting that you say like they're very process oriented, Lean Six Sigma MBA. That's actually my background. I'm a
No,
black belt in Lean Six Sigma. I got my MBA. I do not call myself a seller yet, although I like to believe that I'm in that process of
yeah.
becoming one and like learning how to train the muscle and going through like, hey, this is what I do every single day to make sure that I continue to get better at this, knowing it's going to be a while. Um, how are you finding like the process working with this company? They bought a franchise. Now you're having to work with these process oriented people. Like, do you mind expanding like what the experience has been
Yeah.
like so far with them?
Yeah, in terms of them being able to understand Sandler, it wasn't that difficult. They're smart people,
Yeah.
and they're process oriented. And Sandler is a process. It's a seven-step process, sequential in nature for qualifying and disqualifying opportunities. Sandler was designed to help prospects and sellers get to yes or no outcomes where no is perfectly okay. So they like that because they don't want to be high pressure salespeople. Who does? Um, and they found the techniques to be usable. So for instance, upfront contracts, it just struck them as rational that at the
Yeah.
start of a meeting, we should probably have a conversation about what we're doing here, what the goal is, and what my agenda is, and what your agenda, how much time do we have today? And when we get to the end, what kind of decisions might we make? That just seemed perfectly logical to them. It got a little bit trickier when they started trying to train people and they would get asked questions like, yeah, I tried that, it didn't work because of this, now what do I do? And
Mhm.
that's where just there's nothing like experience,
Yeah.
having been in sales, having trained Sandler, that experience is super helpful. But yeah, they were able to adopt it at least to a moderate level because they're smart and it's a process and they can follow process.
Yeah. And so with getting that experience, at least in my experience with it, is there's a lot of like setting the right mindset to continue to follow through because
Mhm.
it's not an overnight thing. And it's the gaining the experience, being able to get better at that. What are some of like the like pieces of advice you have around like the behavior or like the mindset that someone needs to have and adopt as they're going through this process of becoming an actual seller?
Yeah, yeah. So, we teach something called the success triangle, Austin. And the success triangle, if you can visualize a triangle, the top corner is attitude, the bottom left-hand corner is behavior, bottom right-hand corner is technique. And so all three of these are necessary to be successful in sales, business, manufacturing, sports, playing the violin. You have to have the right mindset, you have to engage in the right activities, and you have to employ the right tactics. So attitude, behavior, technique. The behavior part is important because, well, for a lot of different reasons, but without doing the right behavior, the training's going to fall flat. I
Yeah.
mean, why learn a selling process if you don't intend to actually go out and use it? So from a business development standpoint, for instance, a lot of salespeople are getting ready to get ready, but they aren't actually doing the activities. So one of the first things that I like to do when I'm working with a new client is to get with their leadership team and to roll out the Sandler process, make sure they buy into it, and kind of give them a head start. But then
Hmm.
to coach them on how to manage their people, because what we want to do is send a message right away that the behaviors and techniques we're going to be teaching you are mandatory. And there's a certain amount of them that you need to do, whatever behavior it is that you decide is going to be a part of your plan. It's mandatory to do this. So I'd like to say that I get tremendous results from my clients because I'm such an amazing trainer. I transform their lives, right?
Yeah.
Probably it's just this piece right here where we say, hey, sales manager and sales leaders, are you prepared to have a weekly one-on-one with your people where the two of you get into agreement on the types of behaviors they're going to be doing and you're going to hold them accountable to that behavior? Is that something you're currently doing? And if not, are you committed to doing it? And when they do that, we see a 15 to 20% boost in behavior that's sustainable, and nothing but good things happen after that.
Is there like a particular leverage point or like secret sauce or like certain thing like that should be part of that upfront contract that you've noticed that like, hey, if you have this conversation as a manager to the people and have the expectation for the behaviors, make sure you hit these 3 points or this has to be part of the contract or just is there anything that like kind of anchors in success and like that actual follow through?
I don't know if there's anything in particular that is a real key in terms of the upfront contract, other
Yeah.
than the seller and the manager need to get together and develop this plan. It's what we call a cookbook. Right?
Mhm.
This is a phrase we've used for a long time in Sandler, cookbook. And David Sandler, our founder, called it a cookbook because he said a cookbook contains recipes. Recipes include ingredients and amounts and time. And he said every salesperson needs this. And so, for instance, a cookbook might just be a written document that says every week I will make 50 telephone cold calls. I will send out 50 emails. I will send out 10 new invites on LinkedIn. I will go to one networking meeting and capture at least 3 business cards. I will post content 3 times on LinkedIn. I will comment on my ideal clients' postings at least 5 times, and I will ask one person for a referral or introduction. That's what we mean by a cookbook. It's a set of activities with numbers, and I would call it minimum weekly behaviors. And so from a managerial standpoint, if you're my salesperson, we start there and either you develop it and you submit it to me, and I look at it and I say, okay, let's do it. Or if you don't know what to do because you're brand new, I give it to you and I say, here's what I need you to do. Are you good with it? That's the upfront contract right there, by the way.
Yeah.
Here's what I need you to do. Are you good with it? Or you submit it to me and I go, I'm good with it. Let's put it into play. Now, once we put it into play, from the managerial standpoint, it's very important that they have accountability around the person doing this behavior.
Hmm.
That if what they hear is excuses, that they have to be able to say to the salesperson, okay, was this too much? And if it is, what is your plan to be able to hit your goal? Because I need you to come up with a plan to hit your goal. But until we start getting that minimum behavior, there's not much the manager can do other than to hold their feet to the fire, inspect what they expect. But the idea is once assuming that the salesperson is doing the behavior, then we
Hmm.
can look at ratios because we have expectations. If you make 50 dials, you aren't just making $50 for the heck of it. We're making an assumption you're going to set up 3 appointments or 4 appointments, right? Or an intermediate step might be 10 conversations. And then once you make 50 dials a week for 4 weeks, we just see if you're having 10 conversations. And if not, then we have to do some adjustments.
Yeah. I mean, is it fair to say that like step one, most important thing is just start building behavior and then afterwards start worrying about whether or not it's paying off in terms of book meetings or down the line revenue. And so as long as the behavior is started, then you can start adjusting and building from there. And then have
Yes.
you noticed any trends on like, is it better if you can have the salesperson propose their cookbook and then work from there, or does
Yeah,
it matter?
that's a good question. I think the sales manager has to size up their salesperson and
Yeah.
ask themselves, do I believe this person is capable of coming up with their own plan? And if so, I'm going to let them do it because that is the best practice. But if they kind of look at their person and say, I think they're entirely too new and frankly ignorant of what it's going to take to be successful, then it's probably not best to say come up with a plan because the counter plan I'm going to have to give them is going to be so radically different that it
Mm-hmm.
might be off-putting.
Yeah.
So if you're a senior rep and you've done this sort of thing before, I'm going to let you come up with the plan. Otherwise, I'm probably going to suggest what the plan looks like, try and gain agreement on it, and then get that behavior coming in. To your first question, Austin, yes, we need to simply do the behavior without worrying too much about the results right out of the gate. And a good sales manager always has the results in mind, but they're encouraging their person, just do it. Just do it, and let's go create some data. Okay,
Yeah.
that's the way I like to think about it. It's just data because we
Hmm.
want to be as unemotional as we possibly can be when we're making phone calls, sending out emails, sending out LinkedIn invitations, all that stuff. You're going to experience a lot of ghosting and rejection. That's okay. That's part and parcel of what we're doing. You know that, right?
Yep.
Um, but we want to do the behavior, get the data so we can start to look at ratios because this is where the sales manager, the skill really comes in, is being able to look at, again, hypothetically, 50 dials. We're presupposing 10 conversations, but you only get two.
Hmm.
Okay, what happened? This is where the good sales manager doesn't get angry, doesn't get judgmental, but just says, what's going on?
Yeah.
Right? Are you getting screened by gatekeepers? Yeah, I am. What are you saying to them? Or are you just getting voicemail? Is it just going straight through to voicemail? Yeah. What are you doing in terms of voicemail? Right?
Mhm.
So when the salesperson is doing the behavior but falling short on results, the manager has a couple of options. The first one is to try and coach the quality of the behavior, right? Is there a better
Okay.
way to do it? The second one is to look at the quantity of behavior. Maybe we need to do 75 or 100 instead of 50. And then finally, the manager may start to question the behavior itself and say maybe the phone isn't the way to go and we have to walk in or we have to go to trade shows.
Yeah. So for somebody who doesn't have access to like a skilled manager on a daily basis, aka me, a founder who's doing founder-led sales, looking at my own data and trying to do a self-assessment on, okay, I just need to do more. I just need to do it better, or I just need to do something different. Like, what recommendations would you have in terms of going through that process of self-correcting when I don't necessarily have access on a regular basis to somebody who can come with experience, 19 years experience, to then say, hey, this is a better problem, or this is a different problem.
Selfishly, hire a sales coach like me so I can help you with all this.
That is
But
probably the best answer.
aside from that,
Yeah.
try and be your own best sales manager and do what a sales manager would do. Have a weekly one-on-one with yourself where you look at the data, you try and assess as if when I say data, if you can record the calls, that's
Mhm.
ideal because then you can listen to it critically and try and gauge what it is that you're doing differently. Always be in the process of growing and learning. So again, if you're in a sales training program like the ones that we offer, that's ideal. If not, be reading books, be running things through Chat GPT, right? If you
Yeah.
can toss the transcripts of some of your calls into Chat GPT and explain what you're trying to do versus you're experiencing, you might get some coaching there. That's the best idea. But somehow we have to not just do behavior and hope it works, but the behavior should cause us to get better.
Mhm.
So if I'm a baseball player and I hit fastballs well, but I struggle with curveballs, it doesn't help me to just swing at more fastballs. I need to get a whole bunch of curveballs thrown at my head in order to figure out how to hit a curveball.
Yeah.
So again, behavior is the best shortcut to success, but particularly when it's coupled with some kind of coaching.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed even for like through my own journey of being on a cold call and like going through the process, just by purely getting reps,
Hmm.
it makes me more comfortable. I become more confident. I don't stumble as much. I mean, I'm not perfect by any means, but purely just like reps were getting me
Right.
stronger. Um, and then, then the question has really for me been like, I think then that means, sure, the technique continues to be refined, but then I think it's like, all right, so this is a time to do something different then.
Yeah.
Either a different ICP or a different approach to the same ICP, because I can feel myself getting better. Like I would say like objectively, just because my meetings booked have got increased, but not at the rate I'd like.
Right.
Um, and then it's like, oh, I'll continue to get better if I keep in these reps. So the real lever to do here is maybe do more or maybe do different. And then even a combination of both, because turning both those dials up just gets me more exposure to more data.
That's right. And the other thing, you mentioned ICP. Let's talk about that for a minute, your ideal
Yeah.
client profile. It's a very, very important concept, and I preach it to all my clients that you know the traits of your ideal client. I like to think of it in terms of a bullseye with concentric circles. So you start off with the low-hanging fruit with people that you know, and then
Mhm.
you're slowly moving out to referrals and people that you can get into a conversation because of connections. But eventually it gets cold. And that's where the technique is really at a premium. But if you're burning out, getting depressed, starting to doubt yourself on those cold calls, go back to some of the warmer opportunities
Mm-hmm.
and try and refresh there because you can learn from not only the cold calls but the warmer calls. And ideally, I don't even get to the cold calls, but I'm working referrals and introductions as much as possible. In fact, before you ever make a cold call, if you're using LinkedIn properly, go out to that person's LinkedIn profile and see if you have any connections in common. And if so, call one of those people and ask them
Mm-hmm.
about that person. Ask them how you should reach out to them. Or even if you should, maybe there's somebody else in the organization you should be reaching out to. Or better yet, ask them to introduce you to them.
Yeah. Yeah. So how would you argue that like LinkedIn is used correctly? Because I think it's and I would even throw myself in there as somebody who maybe doesn't use it correctly or even definitely doesn't use it correctly. I think I see a lot of people not using it correctly.
Yeah.
But it seems like part of your cookbook should be LinkedIn, and then there's
Yeah.
a technique around that.
It may be your entire cookbook. You
Yeah.
know, you may be solely using LinkedIn because when you identify somebody you want to reach out to, like me, for instance, I've got 11,000 connections. And if I were to do a search on VP of sales in the Portland metro area, I
Mhm.
would say at least 9 out of 10 of them I'm either connected with or I've got at least 10 common connections with them. And so I should never make a cold call to a VP of sales in Portland metro area. I
Mhm.
should always reach out to somebody that I know that knows them and to say, hey, how well do you know him? I was going to call him about this. Do you think I should, or do you know him well enough to make an introduction? So that when I say correctly using LinkedIn, LinkedIn is the world's largest referral network, and
Yeah.
that's not the way most people think of it. But the more connections that you have within your ICP, the more ability you have to not make cold outreaches, but to
Yeah.
actually tap into the leverage that's already established, the trust that's already built.
And you'd mentioned though earlier with like the cookbook, like your example had a ton of variety in that. And is
Mhm.
that because at the beginning you should have variety to get data and then start honing based on, the data coming in and then potentially reducing or even maintaining? And what would be the best way to get to the point where you can just pull up your LinkedIn and basically have a Rolodex and go, great, this is
Yeah,
I'm going to get my warm referral right now.
right, right. I always say strive for five in order to thrive, five different activities. And it's just
Yeah.
because if you're fishing, there is no pond or river that contains all the fish that you want.
Hmm.
So it's wise to have different fishing poles with different bait that you're putting into different lakes and ponds and streams. And eventually you're going to find what works best for you, particularly once you have clients who are happy with what you're doing. Once you have one client that's happy with what you're doing, you're going to want to ask them for referrals and introductions.
Yeah.
Once you have 100 clients who are happy with the results, you're probably not cold calling anymore. You're mining the referrals and introductions from your clients because that is the most efficient way for you to scale.
Yeah. I mean, nothing beats a warm intro,
That's
right?
right.
Yeah.
That's right. So that everything that we're doing is angling towards that.
Mhm.
And the people who are best able to introduce us are people who are using our services and happy with them.
Yeah. And then and I think I understood correctly, which would be continue to use five, but that five evolves over a period of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that five may turn into all things on LinkedIn. I'm
Right.
reaching out to existing clients to see how happy they are and asking them for introductions. I am identifying through searches on LinkedIn people that match my ICP and seeing who I know that they know. I'm posting. I'm reaching out to the people who are second and third connections who are liking my stuff and inviting them to connect. And I'm commenting on my targets posts. There's
Mhm.
five activities right there, just off
Yeah.
the cuff.
What would you consider to be some more creative activities that you would still consider cookbook? Like my brain goes to cold call, email, send a LinkedIn message, go to a networking event.
Yeah.
But I mean, is that pretty solid for the universe, or would you say, hey, you're missing out on a bunch of other ideas that you should be thinking about more
Well,
regularly?
there's so many ideas, and I want to be careful because is it a good idea? It depends upon the individual and their ICP and their product. But
Mhm.
for instance, establishing strategic alliances. This
Mhm.
can be a dynamite activity for certain types of businesses. A strategic alliance is a person that sells to your ICP, but they're not a competitor. They sell complementary services and products. So
Got it.
to build these relationships and to partner with these people, when you find one or two of these that really are a match and they're like-minded, now all of a sudden I'm saying, Austin, if you're a strategic alliance of mine, hey, we ought to do a free talk at local trade associations and chambers of commerce, and we ought to do a webinar together. And maybe we should feature each other on our websites and in each other's email marketing. And maybe we should write a white paper together. And maybe we should start a panel discussion. And maybe we should have a beer and tequila tasting event in which we invite CEO. It's endless at
Yeah.
that.
So really, like, I think I was coming from a very restricted point of view of what a cookbook
Right,
should involve, even not just like could, but
right.
to not think about all of those different avenues and possibilities is to leave a ton on the table
Yeah.
and to really be missing out on a more effective approach.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I mean, we talk a lot about cold calling. Some
Yeah.
people say it's dead. I don't think it's dead. And for some people, it's really the only way or the most logical way to start, but it should go away eventually. Eventually, you shouldn't be doing much cold outreach at all because you've cultivated a good enough client base and strategic alliances and LinkedIn connections that you can get more creative and have more fun, frankly.
Yeah. But you've got to earn that one.
That's right.
So like for us, like specifically, like that sounds awesome,
Yeah,
but we haven't earned that right yet. So
that's
we need
right.
to continue to do
Still got to
the
grind.
muscle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
still got to grind.
No, it's a fun grind as soon as you start getting used to it and you get the right mindset and the behavior continues to pay off. But I mean, it's not that far away where I just dreaded having to make the first call. And now I'm like, yeah, this is great. My first call today had a great conversation, booked a meeting. First
Yeah,
call, first dial of the week was, and
nice.
that makes it really exciting to be like, hey, there's a win on the other side of this.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. You don't have to you don't have to like making cold calls. David Sandler said you just have to make them. But if you
yeah.
realize that they make you money, yeah, you may actually like them.
Yeah, exactly. All right. We had an upfront contract. We were actually a minute past that upfront contract. Jeff, I really appreciate you taking the time, joining us on the podcast, sharing some wisdom.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts or parting words before we sign off?
Yeah. Another Sandler rule is it's not how you feel that determines how you act, it's how you act that determines how you feel. So put together a plan for actions and do it, whether you feel like it or not. And eventually you're just going to be happy.
That's perfect final words. I appreciate it, Jeff.
Thanks, Austin.